Anne here, and this is More Than a Love Interest, the show where we talk about the arcs of female characters in film. Today, we are talking about Tia Dalma / Calypso in the second and third installments of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. I just want to reiterate that this genre was created for me personally, especially if Margot Robbie's Pirate 6 ever gets off the ground. A female-led Pirates movie would basically be the best movie ever made, and you can quote me on that.
What vexes all men?
What indeed?
Anyway, despite my love for these movies, it has been nearly 20 years since they came out, and some things have not aged fantastically. Not Naomi Harris, look at her. Calypso origin story when?
You had an agreeable sense of the macabre to any delirium.
But for this video, we're going to start off with Calypso's whole story chronologically, then talk about some tropes she falls into and others she avoids, and wrapping up with how impactful she really is. Let's get started.
Right this way, Mrs. Fish.
Alright, for starters, I know that the hidden identity of Calypso as Tia Dalma means that her impact and motivation may not be immediately apparent until you've seen these movies as many times as I have, which, frankly, you probably won't. Honey, I saw them 9 times each while they were still in the theaters. So allow me to lead you through the story from her perspective. This section will be a bit in-depth as we go through everything we know about her, and I will be using Maureen Murdoch's heroine's journey.
Same story, different versions, and all are true.
Now, we do not get any flashbacks about Calypso, but we do learn quite a bit about her backstory. At some point, like a century or so before the movies take place, she was a sea goddess.
As changing and harsh and untamable as the sea.
She has unspecified powers, but she can change her form as it suits her.
Trapped in this single form.
And presumably has some control over the afterlife.
That was the duty he was charged with by the goddess Calypso.
Then she meets Davy Jones, not that one, and they fall in love. So he wishes to be made immortal to remain with her. Very Selene and Endymion. It's giving Thetis and Peleus. In Greek mythology, Calypso was a nymph who detained Odysseus for 7 years, offering him eternal youth and immortality if he would stay with her. So obviously, there's some of that in there as well. Anyway, Calypso gives him the task of ferrying souls to the afterlife, and he will be able to join her every 10 years on land.
10 years I looked after those who died at sea.
And remembering that we are staying in her point of view for the moment, what she knows is that she was not there the first time he was able to come ashore.
And so, in carb ultimate.
She, of course, takes this as the compliment it would be, that he was so affected by her absence, he decided
It was not worth feeling what small, fleeting joy life brings.
and now has become the fearsome and cruel Davy Jones.
You have corrupted your purpose. And so yourself.
And that's where her whole character arc begins, with a separation from the feminine as she is captured by the pirate lords and bound in her bones. Bound her in her bones. Exactly how this impacted how much power she has is unknown. She clearly still has more than anyone else we meet.
Do not forget it was by my power you returned from the dead.
Next, she gathers masculine allies as she sets up a sort of business on the Patana River in Cuba, where pirates come barter favors of her. That's how Jack got his compass prior to the last movie.
The compass you barter from me, it cannot lead you to this?
Their relationship is Interesting. While Jack is presented as a ladies' man,
Jack Sparrow.
and it is implied that he has a similar past with Tia Dalma, it's pretty clear who has the power in the relationship.
I thought I knew you.
Not so well as I'd hoped.
To the point that Gibbs is very concerned about even going to see her.
My need, do you mean a trifling need? Fleeting, as in, say, a passing fancy?
And it signals to him, as much as leaving Jack's hat behind, how dire things are.
Bad enough even to go visit her.
Which brings us to the first time we, as the audience, meet her, with several ominous portents leading up to her door. This starts her road of trials, and she is definitely pleased by the visit, though it's not clear why at this point. She has some gift for prophecy, so is probably aware of how the world is turning, and that the Brethren court is likely to convene soon. Plus, we can be sure she's already plotting for her freedom, since you can see Barbossa's boots in the background here. So that explains her assurance that Jack, with his pieces of 8 and ability to get out of sticky situations, would return now at an opportune moment. But she also picks up on Will's touch of destiny, though she may not know exactly why just yet. I think it's a little unlikely that she'd be so, friendly if she knew that he's going to kill and replace Davy Jones, since she still wants his heart, after all.
And we would be together always. If only you had a heart to give.
But perhaps she can correctly identify that he is going to help free her.
Calypso.
In any case, she is intrigued, but she gets down to business, demanding an offering like the goddess she is.
You know I demand payment.
I brought payment.
The payment is fair.
Her surprise at seeing the key, of course, adds to its importance to the audience. But I also think it's pretty important to her. She's just had this premonition about Will and may not really want to directly connect them to Davy Jones' heart. Like, would she want to be directly responsible for him being controlled or killed, no matter how much he may have corrupted his purpose?
And you did hide away what should always have been mine.
So Jack is defensive about the compass, and she says this.
Jack Sparrow does not know what he wants.
Which foreshadows this discussion in the next movie.
Stab the heart.
Don't stab the heart.
Come again?
The Dutchman must have a captain.
Perhaps she now feels that she's not arranging Davy Jones' death because she's doubting that Jack would even act, so she's on board with giving them some more information.
Your key go to a chest, and it is what lay inside the chest you seek.
And this is some top-notch exposition. Top-notch, both because Naomi Harris's presentation is just having so much fun. She's delighted to tell this story, and it's great to watch.
You know I've David Jones, yes?
I also really like that this whole scene has strong vibes of being told a ghost story. The lighting, the music, especially this part.
The key, he keep with him at all times.
Perfect for the genre. Next, we have her illusion of success as she sets things in motion to free herself. We just know it's not gonna go exactly how she thinks.
I would give you my heart. And we would be together always.
Now, I don't know if she's just messing with him or if the jar of dirt would actually help.
Then it helps.
Given what we see with the buckets later, it's possible that it helps. But in any case, she sends them off to find the Flying Dutchman, and given her repetition of this line,
A touch of destiny.
I think she strongly suspects she knows what his fate will be.
This ship has a purpose again.
I also think Barbossa is still dead at this point. Gross. But now that she knows things are in motion that could guarantee her release, she awakens him after our heroes go to Davy Jones. Around the end of Dead Man's Chest and the beginning of At World's End is when Calypso is in her darkest moments, though she is also excited to join the adventure more actively. The timeline is unclear in these movies, no doubt because sailing is a fairly time-consuming mode of travel compared to what we're used to seeing. But at some point later, the crew returns to her with news that Jack is dead, though she seems to already know, given the reception they get. She knows because she's magic, obviously. Anyway, she and Elizabeth almost passed the Bechdel test here, depending on your definition, which is exciting.
Against the cold and the sorrow.
With you.
Yes.
But she cleverly starts a conversation that leads to them wanting to do what she wants, to go get Jack, and importantly, his piece of 8 from Davy Jones' locker.
Don't you forget why you had to bring me back. Why I could not leave Jack to his well-deserved fate.
Correctly calling on Will because he's the most likely to do it, and of course has that touch of destiny.
Elizabeth.
Would you do it?
So they all agree, and she calls in her trump card, teasing the next movie.
But if you go and brave the weird and haunted shores at World's End, you will need a captain who knows those waters.
At World's End starts with this amazing scene and song, which is, of course, about Calypso.
His men stole the queen from her bed.
Now that her plot is in motion, Calypso naturally chooses to join our heroes on their adventures. And she's clearly having a great time. Plus, this song is familiar.
Where we'll roam.
One thing I really like about both movies is the musical cues. When we hear this song, you might think it's just consistent ambiance for the films. But it is often hinting instead at the relationship between Calypso and Davy Jones, long before we know that's a thing. Notably, their separate music boxes do not play the same notes, but ones that fit together in harmony, like so. Fantastically, Calypso's descent is very literal in her journey. Anyway, she sails to the ends of the earth in the frozen sea, where she explains that
Barbossa was only dead,
and what Davy Jones' locker contains.
not of death, but punishment.
So Tia Dalma continues being the exposition provider.
Your key go to a chest.
And haunted shores at World's End. There's an evil on these seas. Worst fate a person can bring upon himself. There is a cost must be paid in the end. They should be in the care of Davy Jones.
We are nothing but ghosts to them.
Something I would normally be disappointed by, except for how it is framed. Now, I'm not the person to get too much into this, but there is an outdated trope referred to as a magical Negro, which basically means a black person is there to provide information or be a deus ex machina for a white person's story.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry. I was raised on TV, and I was conditioned to believe that every black woman over 50 is a cosmic mentor.
Were you conditioned to pay for your damn tacos, Seinfeld?
And that seems like this is what Tia Dalma is there to do.
Jack Sparrow does not know what he wants.
Except that the reason she knows all of this is because she is
The goddess, Calypso.
She knows about ferrying souls to the afterlife because that's something she literally had power over.
10 years I devoted to the duty you charged to me.
She knows about Davy Jones and about the locker because she put him at his job.
You have corrupted your purpose.
And presumably gave him control of the Kraken and the locker because they were under her power before.
Better were the days when mastery of seas came not from bargains struck with eldritch creatures.
So I really appreciate how subtly it goes from her telling a tale that everyone seems to know, at least Gibbs does,
No, I heard it was the sea he fell in love with.
to knowing more and more specific things that we might start to become suspicious of.
Him was a man. Once.
Suspicious it's bad writing that she knows everything, I mean. But then they flip it and have a really solid reason for why she would know all of these things and why she is the one providing exposition. She lived it. She was there. She caused these things to happen.
I will be free.
Knowing that she is Calypso reframes all of the scenes she's in, so that she isn't just spouting exposition, she's telling her story too, and in a way that really fits the aesthetic of a pirate movie. While show don't tell is obviously a good code to follow,
The code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules.
pirates, and sailors in general, had a lot of lore that was passed from ship to ship by a good storyteller. And Calypso is a great storyteller, so I like that it's her role to continue that tradition.
Him could come ashore to be with she who love him.
The next step involves urgently yearning to reconnect with the feminine, which I would say is these two scenes.
I intend to release her, but for that I need Brethren cords.
Do not forget it was by my power you returned from the dead.
As Tia Dalma longs to reveal her true nature.
If you feel me.
And I do find it a bit strange that she does not know how to return from the locker, or at least does not share that knowledge with anyone, but she is able to bring Jack and the pearl to them as soon as they arrive.
Witty Jack is closer than you think.
We get the juicy information that she has tried to kill Jack before, but like in a fun way.
Don't tell me you didn't enjoy it at the time.
But her plot is more or less proceeding as planned. She has Barbossa and Jack with their pieces of 8, and they all return to the land of the living and are on their way to the Brethren Court. So she stays out of the bickering of our other characters, except some with Barbossa. She doesn't really like that he's taking so long, and especially dislikes that he's now in control over her.
It took 9 pirate lords to bind you, Calypso, and it'll take no less than 9 to set you free.
Next, Calypso must heal the wounded masculine in the form of Davy Jones. Or make the attempt, anyway.
And what of your fate, David Jones?
Though finally taken to the Brethren Court, she is not allowed to go inside. But instead, Barbossa puts her in the brig, where she does some seething and some waiting, comforted by her music box. And then she hears the answering tune. This is honestly one of my favorite moments in this series, especially since the hints have been building so slowly to this reveal. And then we immediately get payoff in the most dramatic way possible.
You come for me.
You were expecting me.
She is pleased to see him and knew he would come. He is upset that she would presume to know what he would do, clearly still holding a grudge. She tells him her plan for the court that cursed her.
The last thing they will learn in this life is how cruel I can be.
And he contemplates doing what he said he wanted most.
There is only one price I will accept. Calypso. Murdered.
But he can't do it because
my heart will always belong to you.
Her penultimate step is to heal the split with the feminine. In short, to become a goddess again. He leaves her there, and she is triumphant, on the eve of victory, sure she's about to get everything that she wants. And then, the next morning, things start off well for her. I mean, Barbossa has a concerning method of speaking to a lover, apparently.
Calypso, I release you from your human bonds.
But fortunately, Ragetti is there to save the day.
I release you from your human bonds.
I ship it. Anyway, she's about to be freed at last to get revenge on all these pirates who are conveniently at sea to face off with their enemy. Honestly, I expect she would have wreaked havoc on both sides. Except...
Dalma!
Calypso.
Except Will has something important to tell her. Who really imprisoned her?
When the Brethren Court first imprisoned you, who was it that told them how?
Name him!
The real reason Davy Jones cut out his heart, his true betrayal, is finally revealed.
And after which betrayal did you cut out your heart, I wonder? Davy Jones.
She is devastated by this and overcome with grief. Barbossa begs for her assistance. She looks down at him, smiling in a purely chaotic way. Yeah, there's the otherworldly Calypso we've seen hints of. Then she shouts at him. This is French, which translates to, across all the waters, find the path to he who wrongly entombed me.
Calypso.
Clearly a curse on Davy Jones.
Calypso.
Then she changes form again into the crabs we so often see her with and disappears into the sea. The pirates are disappointed, but then we find out that she is at work after all.
The wind's on our side, boys! That's all we need!
We have a favorable wind, sir.
Finally, she integrates the masculine and the feminine. She becomes a goddess. But she now knows Davy Jones for who he is, and she isn't gonna put up with that. A maelstrom forms, which is no doubt her doing. Davy Jones is bolstered by it. Sure, it cannot hurt him.
She'll not harm us! Full bore and into the abyss!
That clearly means he knows she's behind it, and he's assured that she doesn't know of his betrayal. Until here. Which is why he calls her name heartbrokenly before he falls into the sea at his death.
Calypso.
After her curse and what she foresaw comes to pass.
A torch of destiny.
Ready on the gun!
And so that's the end of her part in the movie. Overall, you can fill in the blanks to give her a complete arc. Being separated from her role as a goddess at the start to self-actualizing by the end. Even dumping that no-good ex she was holding out hope for. Good for her.
Name him!
And the storytelling around her true identity was quite clever and turned her from an exposition dump / problematic trope to a primary source and powerful player in her own right, which I find delightful.
I will be free.
Now that is not the only trope she subverts, so let's get into some more of those.
Now, don't tell me you didn't enjoy it at the time.
Alright, next. When I sat down to watch these movies in preparation of these videos, I was very excited to talk about Calypso, since she tends to be underrated, in my opinion. And especially because a black woman having such a major role in the fantasy genre is still pretty rare.
It's a shame.
However, there are a couple things, especially in Dead Man's Chest, that did not age the best. But before we start on those, I just want to point out a moment that really encapsulates the Pirates franchise. Well, when it's at its best, anyway. What makes it charming is that it takes common tropes and genre conventions and turns them around. Not always making them more realistic, but just questioning them.
No survivors. Then where do the stories come from, I wonder?
So for this part, I want to talk about a couple of tropes that apply to Calypso, but were perhaps not considered deeply. And I'm not going to be wholly negative here, it's just apparent that not a lot of thought went into how she did or did not fit into previous tropes.
I thought I knew you.
Not so well as I'd hoped.
Overall, there are ways Tia Dalma / Calypso fits into tropes specifically about black women and black witches, but several ways in which she refreshingly does not. And I'm going to praise those, even if I would be very surprised to learn that they were intentionally deconstructing the tropes.
If you don't want it, give it back.
No.
These all have some nuance, so let's start with the easier ones. First, her role in the story. In her first appearance, she's just there to help the white folks on their journey.
It seems we have a need to find the Flying Dutchman.
Then later, this white guy insists on controlling her because he has a use for her magic.
We have Calypso.
Obviously, these put her in a bit of a subservient role to the white heroes, which is not great. However, as I discussed in the previous section, they subvert the idea that she's just a magical Negro or a source of exposition by making her actually a primary source. And then how her story ends avoids several common tropes that usually follow on the subservient thing. She's not a villain. She is not using magic solely to get revenge on someone who wronged her, which are very common tropes for black witches, especially. And the biggest thing she avoids is that she does not have to sacrifice herself for the good of our heroes.
We shall be the ones to set her free, and in her gratitude she will see fit to grant us boons. Unleash your fury upon those who dare pretend themselves your masters or mine.
Now, she is a bit vengeful, of course.
The last thing they will learn in this life is how cruel I can be.
But she does not follow through with the Brethren court, and though her powers are unleashed at the end for selfish reasons on the part of our heroes,
I have fulfilled my vow. I now ask your favor.
She's actually freed and restored to her proper goddess self. She does not have to die or even be diminished to help them. Instead, they help her get back unbelievable power, and then she just leaves them to sort things out.
Why, she's no help at all.
Even if her final act on screen is to curse her faithless former lover, it's not in a petty way. She doesn't transform or use magic because she wants revenge. She ultimately just wants to be herself again. And that is her primary motivation, which avoids a lot of the more problematic ways black women are represented.
If we cannot escape these doldrums, I fear we will sail on trackless seas forever.
Next, we need to get into the concept of othering, since it especially applies to Dead Man's Chest. Othering is treating another person or people as intrinsically different from and alien to oneself. In fiction, it is often used as a shorthand to indicate in-groups.
Tell it to me in Star Wars.
So these droids are othered, and they are outside of the characters we're going to sympathize with. Therefore, we don't really mind what happens to them, whereas we do sympathize with these droids either because they're more humanoid or we have spent enough time with them and we like them, and therefore we would not like it if something bad happened to them.
I didn't mean to intrude. No, please don't get up.
Having trouble with your droid?
No problem. Why?
A more relevant example today are the natives in King Kong movies. They are othered to varying degrees, but whether they are portrayed in the obviously problematic simplification of savages in the original, or as very wise in Skull Island, they're always very distant from our heroes. They are not like us at all because we have white protagonists to pay attention to, and any input from the people who actually live near Kong full time would, I guess, ruin the tension of the story. Anyway, Team Godzilla. So you can see how othering can become a problem when applied to real-world situations. These natives are the only non-white characters most of the time. All the white characters are sympathetic and humanized. So here's my hot take. This dichotomy is bad.
Save me.
And that brings us to these guys. These natives are pretty well painted, so you can't necessarily tell their skin color, but, well, they're not white, are they? They can't really communicate with our main cast. They're clearly antagonistic, as well as cannibals, all of which combine to reinforce the idea that natives are ruthless savages. They even chase down a dog. So while these aren't exactly the natives from King Kong, they're not much better. Now, we do have this moment where our white heroes escape, and they do it in very ridiculous ways with this posh song playing over their silly antics. And that could be a subversion of the trope. Instead of our heroes being, more civilized or more intelligent, they're just bumbling idiots and it works. But if this is intended to subvert the trope of othering these natives, it's not clear. It's a little too subtle if that was the intention. So it's just kind of uncomfortable to watch in 2023.
Well done.
And then we get to Tia Dalma.
Her.
She's in this creepy bayou. She has pretty intense makeup that, well, makes her further distant and strange.
You.
She has all these weird objects hanging from her rafters. She's basically the witch in the woods you go to when you have no other choice.
We have a need to travel upriver.
Not to be trusted, not to get too close to.
I'll watch your back.
It's me front I'm worried about.
Because she has otherworldly motives you cannot comprehend.
And it is what lay inside the chest you seek, don't it?
Well, those may be fairly standard tropes in fantasy, but they certainly other her significantly in a way that, for example, Anna Maria was not.
You stole my boat!
Actually.
Or even our actual ghost pirates in the last movie. So having her be the only black woman in these movies, while also using a lot of these techniques to make her seem strange, is not really great for representation. Davy Jones is, an octopus, and he still shows at least as much humanity as she does. Maybe more so. So that's what I'm saying about not a lot of attention being paid to the tropes. But clearly there was some. I mean, the natives are intentionally unique, and the new crew is much more diverse. Except basically all the people of color don't survive past the first third of the movie. Honestly, I'm not sure what the intention even was with these bits. And I know it's like 20 years later, so this isn't really a fair comparison, but the best thing I've seen that actually questions the othering trope is the Willow Disney Plus show with the trolls. Like, we were expecting this? And then we meet one, and he's just like...
Hi there.
This and the brownies part?
Perhaps you might know them.
Why would I know them?
They're brownies?
Oh, and I suppose all Nelwyn in the world know each other? Do you have any idea how offensive that is?
Really faces that issue of othering head on and avoids any kind of stereotypes. I'm just saying, if you like how pirates subverts tropes, you should check out Willow.
Have you ever been in a fight?
You mean like verbally?
I mean like defending yourself against someone who wants to hurt you.
No. Have you?
If you're asking if I'd rather have this conversation in private than in mine full of vicious trolls, 100% that's an easy yes, but who knows when that'll be?
Or we could just not talk about it.
All of which is to say that Tia Dalma in particular is othered, even beyond the rest of the fantastical setting and characters. There are narrative reasons for doing so, and I do feel this effect would be lessened if we didn't have the natives first, but it's still a reason that this movie may have left a bad taste in my mouth until the next one came out.
You knew this.
I did not.
Finally, let's talk briefly about the sexual undertones. It's unfortunately common for Black women to be more sexually available than their white counterparts. But as with Elizabeth, that's subverted somewhat here.
What indeed?
It was subversive for our proper British lady to be interested in and in control of her own love life. Calypso similarly subverts tropes by being presented as clearly the one in control of her romantic encounters.
What service may I do you?
She's not simply available to either the characters or the viewer, but that part of her life is important nonetheless. And she may be connected romantically to several male characters, but one she's not with Barbossa, who exerts his control over her in other ways. So adding a romantic element could be an issue, especially given the respective races. And two, she is the instigator, and things only happen under her terms, with Jack and Davy Jones, maybe Will and Ragetti?
Calypso, release you from your human bonds.
So these combine to avoid putting her in the more problematic romantic tropes, especially since all of these are interracial relationships, and she's not made sexless to achieve this. Instead, she has more sexual agency than basically any female character I've ever seen, and is really great, if likely unintentional.
Would you love me if I was anything but what I am?
So overall, there are some tropes in play that are unfortunate, and there clearly was not the same effort made to subvert tropes related to her that there was applied to the other characters. Still though, some were subverted, and I would say her portrayal is generally positive and a refreshing take, even if there are a few caveats to that. The most glaring simply being that she's the only Black woman in the Caribbean for some reason, which is certainly important to keep in mind.
It's a shame.
As I said, I really like how the trope of magical exposition dump is turned on its head by having Tia Dalma actually be Calypso, so she's telling her own story instead of just lore. That's a great touch. I'm just saying that meeting her after we have these natives, which are definitely the worst part of these films, means you kind of needed to do some work to make sure she didn't just seem like a magical Negro stereotype. Here to give the white dudes some information and help them along their quest before disappearing from the movie.
A torch of destiny.
So being aware of tropes means you can use them intentionally and avoid the more negative stereotypes that centuries of lazy writers may have ascribed to them. And that should have gone more into Dead Man's Chest, especially since these movies do a lot to subvert tropes. That's a huge part of their charm, but it takes too long to subvert this one, and it compounds the issue of which characters get continuing stories.
I have friends. I definitely have friends. Objectively, I can say that I have all the friends. We have friends. We definitely have friends. Friends, friends, friendly friends. We have all the friends. Cool!
Anyway, for me personally, I think the writers put a lot of effort into how Calypso's story would turn out, and I appreciate that. So these negatives aren't enough to ruin the story for me, though I'll probably skip this part on the rewatch. But let's get into the trope that is actually why I wanted to make this video. Okay, let me start by saying that At World's End contains two of the most romantic stories I have heard in my entire life. One I will talk about in a later video on Elizabeth.
It's always belonged to you.
So let's talk about Calypso and Davy Jones.
You did hide away what should always have been mine.
First, a thought exercise. Think of as many characters as you can that fit this. A villain or anti-hero in a movie. He's heartless and cruel, lashing out at everyone because of what happened to him before this story. He is intelligent and exacting with few weaknesses. He is, in fact, terrifying. And we find out that he lost the love of his life, and that was why he cut out any kindness or compassion from himself in order to be the formidable foe our heroes now have to face. Okay, great. Solid backstory, good character motivation. Of those examples, what exactly happened to his lady love? She was killed, right? Maybe by his enemies, maybe as a result of his own actions. But yeah, she's definitely dead. And probably portrayed angelically. A perfect Madonna figure whose loss explains everything we need to know about our tragic villain or anti-hero.
Same story, different version.
So, what do we know about Davy Jones? We know from the outset that he cut out his heart because of a lady, but we don't know why. It's easy to chalk it up to what most stories do. She's fridged, just an excuse to humanize the character doing bad stuff.
I can't breathe.
Yes, I'm a bit nervous myself.
It's common for dudes to be going on killing rampages because their wife and kids are dead. It's basically the sexy lamp of character motivation.
I just want my kids back.
However, that is not what happened in this story. Like, I cannot express how shocked I am that the cause of all this male angst is just, chilling over there. I literally cannot think of another example where that's true. Being the catalyst for a villain is like the #1 killer of women in stories, Oh! Oh! The hate! But this? Davy Jones didn't cut out his heart because his lost love was lost to him and he's a big sad boy. His origin story isn't having a woman die or even be duplicitous by marrying someone else. No, his origin story is that he was so crazy in love with this literal goddess that he consented to ferrying souls to the afterlife for the rest of eternity if it meant he could see her for a single day every 10 years. Like, that is romantic as hell. That's god-tier romance. But then the drama continues. It turns out she actually betrayed him, so he betrayed her right back. Except, unlike what lesser stories would do, her betrayal wasn't that she had an affair or didn't actually love him or one of those common tropes. No, her betrayal was standing him up for their date because she's...
as changing and harsh and untamable as the sea.
I don't know if I can even explain how impactful this has been on me, because it is vanishingly rare to get a storyline like this, where Calypso is not only alive, but not presented as, some bitch for not being there. It's just that she's feral and eternal.
Is my nature.
And he didn't understand eternity yet when he made a choice that will haunt him until the end of time. She wasn't there, so he betrayed her.
She's the one. And then you betrayed her.
And the reason he can't stand to have his heart near him is because he knows he was wrong to consign her to such torture.
Cut off from the sea, from all that I love.
Because he learned how little of eternity it really is to wait 10 more years.
Finally, when we could be together again, you weren't there. She pretended to love me. She betrayed me!
It has been torture, trapped in this single form.
As changing and harsh and untamable as the sea.
And you did hide away what should always have been mine.
Now, of course, our story is not told from either of their perspectives, but Will, our point of view character, takes a significant role in it. He highlights the damning fact of when Davy Jones cut out his heart.
And after which betrayal did you cut out your heart, I wonder?
And is the one to tell Calypso the truth.
When the Brethren Court first imprisoned you, who was it that told them how?
Name him!
Davy Jones.
She doesn't take it well, of course, but let's go back to this scene when Davy Jones confronts her. She asks if he...
Would you love me if I was anything but what I am?
And he leaves the scene saying,
My heart will always belong to you.
Bringing home the point that, yeah, he didn't cut out his heart for love for her or because she betrayed him, but because he did a horrible thing to the person he loved and still loves most. And man, if that doesn't slap.
I hadn't finished that.
Pirate movies are always capital R romantic, like the Romantic movement, meaning highlighted by a focus on the common man, on strong senses, emotions, and feelings, and awe of nature, celebration of the individual, and the importance of imagination.
I think we've all arrived at a very special place, eh? Spiritually, ecumenically, grammatically.
But a big thing that I absolutely adore about these movies is that they commit to being little r romantic as well, especially compared to other blockbusters, who tend to walk back the romance and not treat the romantic subplot as actually important to the story. For these two movies, we don't know it right away, but the Calypso-Davy Jones relationship is basically the core of the plot. Their backstory is meted out slowly and subtly, so it isn't exactly a surprise when we found out the truth, but it's certainly not what we're expecting going in. In fact, I remember one of my friends suggesting that Tia Dalma would end up being the reason Davy Jones cut out his heart after we watched Dead Man's Chest, and I, a fool, didn't believe her.
Oh, thank you.
But watching the two of them back to back, I think they build to it really well. And I saved this part for last because I think that after our discussion of Calypso as a black woman, that makes the romance all the more powerful. I mean, when was the last time you saw an interracial relationship like this? When was the last time you saw a movie where the chief love story involved a black woman? And the way she is framed in the relationship, she has all the power. And his betrayal is the one that's condemned, not hers. Sure, you can say you would simply have been on land when Davy Jones could come ashore for the first time, but well, you're not an unknowable sea goddess, are you? If I were Orpheus, I would simply not turn to look at Eurydice, but that's not how the story goes.
You have a touch of destiny about you.
So yeah, this remains one of the most romantic stories I have ever heard, and the fact that a black woman is centered in it with her own agency and desires has always meant a lot to me.
My heart will always belong to you.
So is Tia Dalma more than a love interest? Oh yeah. We don't, of course, know that she is a love interest until we are significantly through her screen time. It's almost her last scene that we find out for sure.
And you did hide away what should always have been mine.
As a result, the question is more, is Tia Dalma more than exposition? And I would say yes. She is pivotal in the final showdown, both for bringing the Maelstrom and for putting Will on this path in the first place. I do wish she had a bit more of an active role in their adventures, but she brings Barbossa back, and then Jack, and ensures that souls who die at sea will be safely ferried to the afterlife from now on. And she gets revenge on her ex-boyfriend who betrayed her, so that's nice.
What vexes all men?
Overall, I love her story, and if they're continuing the franchise, it would be great if they explored her more fully. As it is, though, she remains one of my favorite parts of the series.
Tia Dalma and I go way back, thick as thieves. Nigh inseparable we are.
Thank you for listening to me talk about my favorite franchise yet again. Next time, we're wrapping this up with a final episode on Elizabeth, then going back to Star Wars. Please like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, join my Patreon, buy me a coffee, all of those things so you don't miss it. See you then.